I'm Safi.
And I'm Mystic.
And this is Lore Together. This is the podcast where a husband and wife duo go over all of the characters, settings, and other storytelling pieces of video games because it's a thing we like to do together. We lore together.
Yep. And this is episode 20, and I don't know what we're doing.
Oh,
I know
that's
it's
right.
Fallout related, but that's about it.
That's it.
Just as a couple things to get out of the way at the top here, you may hear our little buddy in the background. We are new parents.
Yes, and he is so wee.
And he makes noise, as babies do.
But cute noises, we promise.
Also, if you like this podcast and would like to support us and get access to early episodes, access to our bi-weekly streams, as well as our mini episodes, which we have 2 out there now, you can do that by supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/loretogether.
If you just want to keep up with us, we do have our Twitter at Lore Together. You can also email us loretogether@gmail.com. And I think
That's it?
that's it. I may dabble in something new at some point.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Also, if you do like this podcast, we do hope that you will rate it wherever you can.
Yeah, you can rate us at not only iTunes, but Podchaser. So we're signed up for Podchaser now. So just find us there and give us a review.
And we appreciate that.
Yay.
And so, you are in the hot seat.
Yes, I am in the hot seat today. And
All I know is it's Fallout.
yes, do you have a guess as to what it is in Fallout?
You had mentioned it was not going to be from one episode.
No, it's not from one.
From one game.
Yeah, not from one specific game. There is a lot of focus on a specific game because that's where a lot of it comes from, but it is not necessarily a thing that happens in one game. Also, it's a 2-parter, so think about what would have a 2-parter worth of information.
I'm hedging my bets here that it has something from New Vegas, just because I know that's your favorite.
It is my favorite, but not necessarily, no.
Cannot venture a guess at the moment, then.
I decided to do the chronological history of Nuka Cola.
I know a little bit of... Okay, so I've played Fallout 4, and I know I've done Nuka World.
Have you done all of Nuka World?
I have only... So here's the thing. I don't like being the bad guy.
Right.
So
yeah, neither do I.
I usually do open season and just kill everybody who's a raider.
Have you gone there with the Minutemen?
I have not.
I think that's a mod, but I think you can do that. Like, I think there's a mod where you just go in there. Somebody was like, I don't want to be evil. Let me just go in there with the Minutemen. And you just free everybody who needs to be freed there.
I've beaten... Before I decided that I didn't want to be the bad guy.
Right.
I did play through... it was like the Kitty Kingdom or the kids area.
Kitty Kingdom, yes.
Where there's like the radioactive fog. I've also done a little bit. I've gotten the star cores in Galactic Zone, but I didn't delve into the history there. I was just digging up star cores.
Yeah. So we're not going to necessarily go through the whole history and every little aspect of Nuka World, but we will be touching in a lot of that.
Okay.
And that's going to be a lot more actually.
I know what happens to what's his name? The guy who invented Nuka Cola. I know what happens to him.
Well, don't spoil that for everybody else because we're definitely going to be talking about that.
But other than that, I don't know. I know what's her name? Sierra Petranova?
Yeah, Sierra Petranova. Yes. So
she's annoying.
She's the only person I know who today would probably be topping my history to a certain extent because she is a hyper fan.
Yeah.
But
I know that she's a hyper fan.
Yeah.
I know that she was in Fallout 3 and in Nuka World.
Oh, I didn't know she was also in Fallout 3.
Her museum is off in the western area of the Capital Wasteland.
She got all the way. Well, yeah, I guess the Commonwealth wouldn't be that far.
It's not super far. And
yeah.
It's been, I think Fallout 3 and Fallout 4 are 10 years apart? 10 or 15 years apart?
It's only 10 years apart, then that makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense.
So, but yeah, that's kind of my entire knowledge of Nuka Cola, other than the fact that their cola is radioactive.
Well, not all of it. We'll get into that.
Okay, I already learned something.
Yeah,
I thought it
not
all
of it. Yeah. So I remember your one thing Now, you guys might not have heard Mystic talk about this because I don't think we recorded this, but off air, I guess is the way to say it. Mystic mentioned to me that he was kind of perplexed about how every time I had a thing about Dragon Age, it kind of had a thesis to it. I kind of wrote it like an essay. And I get that. That's not always what we're trying to do here. The things that interest me about Dragon Age are the conspiratorial things. Conspiratorial things for me have to be proven. You have a thesis, you try to prove that thesis. And because since that's my focus is proving the thesis, it sounds up like an essay that I did write in college once or twice before. I mean, that's just how I approach it. However, my interest in Fallout doesn't really need a thesis because there's not as much conspiratorial theorizing that happens in that world. If anything, it's just the conspiracies are brought to light due to deterioration in age of the dystopian setting.
Sure, like the main spoiler, the main conspiracy that Vault-Tec is running social experiments.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, yeah.
So that it's a totally different frame, and there's a lot of strange things that keep a history from, before the bombs dropped and after the bombs dropped, and one of them was Nuka Cola. And I'm just being a former econ major, just like listening into what the business was. So the way we're going to do this two-parter is we're going to do the first part's going to be the history of Nuka Cola before the bombs dropped. And then we'll do the history of Nuka Cola after the bombs dropped, which will also touch into not everything in Nuka World, but some certain parts that tie into what Nuka Cola was doing right around the time the bombs dropped and what that meant because a lot of that then meant that Nuka World had other after effects to it.
Right.
Some of which, Mystic, I'm sure you know, some of which I
do know just from knowing. Okay. All right.
So we're going to start with part 1 of the history of Nuka Cola before the bombs dropped.
Now, there's one thing I want to ask.
Yeah.
And this is a thing that before we decided that you were doing Fallout, I started looking into this and I couldn't quite figure it out. Where is the Divergence?
Okay. It's actually one of the first things I'm going to touch upon.
Oh, okay.
So my first part was just focus on the fact that Nuka Cola is just prolific throughout the whole series. It's been there since the first game. And it's kind of evolved from just being this background setting to show how different the Divergence is to now being like so iconic and necessary to recognizing something that's part of Fallout. The same as it is like the Vault-Tec boy logo and the radiation constantly everywhere in general, and certain raider groups or certain factions that have become very much part of the series. Brotherhood of Steel, very much integral to Fallout.
I'm trying to remember a raider group that's like that's of note beyond like
I think of the Gunners. I thought the Gunners were relatively big, but
okay,
but that's just me.
Because I like the only time I heard of raider groups was
The Gunners
World.
are not like typical wild like
right.
going
Raiders
crazy
are
raiders.
To digress slightly. There's this weird thing with the raiders that people are like, oh, that's what happens when you're lawless and it's just everyone for themselves. And it's like, no, they mutilate people and put them on display. It's like a weird twisted culture.
It depends on the raider groups you have.
And I think that Nuka World actually did kind of cement that a little bit because you have the 3 different raider groups that all are very different.
To touch on something that we're not going to focus on in the episodes, the point of the Nuka World DLC is that you get a chance to be the evilest of evil dudes. And that's not something that Mystic and I like to do in general.
I feel bad when I play evil characters. It's like
I know, I feel so guilty.
It's like kill this puppy, and you're like, no, I like puppies.
Right, like murder this innocent family, but they're an innocent family. Like that's not. I prefer being the hero. That's why I like playing certain video games. And if you like, getting on the wild side of evilness, I guess the Nuka World DLC is a great thing for you to pursue.
There is this weird thing, like there's a balancing act to it. If I'm playing Skyrim and I get the Ring of Nimira, which lets me be a cannibal, and I'm just eating the people that have already attacked me, that doesn't feel evil.
That's more like the show Dexter. Remember that show? I'm only murdering people because they're actually already bad.
Because like the cannibalistic nature that Nimira grants is evil. Like the people who do it are evil. Like there are people who have killed people there in her in her temple
Right.
or whatever. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if I would call the act itself necessarily evil.
Right.
So
It depends on the context. So
anyway, sorry, that was a digression on my part.
yeah. So the hope was to do more of a chronological look of it. So that's how I kind of, when I did my research, that's how I organized it. So it's kind of like a fast and loose timeline of Nuka Cola, and the influence of the corporation therein.
Okay.
Now, to talk about the divergence that Mystic brought up, that the idea is that the universe that Fallout takes place in diverges from our current timeline.
Mm-hmm.
There's some debate on when it starts, but some of the theories to cause are mostly linked to the invention of the transistor, which did not happen in 1947 in the Fallout universe. It didn't happen until 2023.
They do have transistors.
Yes, but
Okay.
they came so much later, which is why there's kind of more of a reliance on like nuclear energy and other tech that
Yeah, there's not really, there's like this weird dichotomy of you have tech that feels miniaturized like robots and stuff,
right.
but it's also not because there's like vacuum tubes and stuff in it too.
Right. So that's part of the reason why it is the way it is. The transistor in our timeline was invented in 1947. The transistor in the Fallout universe timeline was invented in 2023. So we wouldn't have any of the things that transistors provide to us in our universe if we were in the Fallout universe.
That's why all the computers are huge.
Exactly. They're massive. YouTuber Vanillic Puma Gaming has a good video about all the potential spots where the divergence could occur. Part of it's the transistors. Part of it's also like the way weapons were invented and such like that. And then Oxhorn, who's a family favorite in this household, a YouTuber that we go to a lot, also has theories based around Fallout 3's mothership Zeta, citing possible divergences all the way back to the 1500s, as well as a ton of small little divergences throughout the timeline. That the idea is that there's so many little divergences that it causes our universe to be completely different. And it's just him picking up what he will, things that are put in there that are seen as like hints that would suggest, certain technologies came before and certain technologies came after, things like that.
Interesting.
I mention these theories to say that if certain references on the timeline don't make sense, don't focus on that, because we could do a whole mini episode on all the possible divergences and whose theories mean what and yada, 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 and what the writers actually intended.
A game universe that has inconsistencies, possibly? No.
Yeah, in fact, we might reference one or two right now. But I just want to say that for anybody who's new to the Fallout universe, that's kind of the premise, is that there's a huge divergence, and that's kind of why the history goes the way that it is. So, and as we've been talking about, a lot of what we know comes from Fallout 4's Nuka Cola World DLC, the Perfect Evil Player DLC. So a lot of what I got is through Let's Plays, because I couldn't stomach playing it on my own. So there's so much lore, and it is a great opportunity to be the worst raider you could be on the Commonwealth. But if you're a softie like we are, you won't be able to stomach the characters you have to befriend and the amount of people to screw over. Like, you not only are supporting 3 raiders that are all bad in very unique different ways. You have the operators, which are basically like
money.
Crimes are money. Money is crimes. And you've got the disciples, which are just gore-tastic.
Sadistic.
Yeah, they're super sadistic. And then you have the pack, which is just anarchy. Like, the whole point is animalistic anarchy. Like, it's all about who's the biggest and toughest and roughest. So that's pretty much how it is. And you basically have to decide throughout the DLC which 2 of the 3 you like the most. And not only that, not only do you have to befriend these raiders with these crazy ideas of how to live, which include, like, keeping slaves, which they do.
That was the pack, right?
The pack has people in cages, but all 3 of them are keeping slaves in Nuka World. Basically, the alliance that they have,
collars.
Yeah, have slaves doing work in Nuka World. And not only do you have that, but then you get put on missions to go out to the Commonwealth and take over other people's houses and threaten to kill them if you don't let them take their land and give it to one of the raiding groups.
And then Preston Garvey's upset.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's just... That's why I think it's a mod where you go with the Minutemen and you just take the whole place down. So...
We'll have to look up for that mod and put it in the description then.
Right. Yeah, we'll try to do that.
We're bad about that. I'm bad about putting stuff in the description. I really should.
Yeah, that's all Mystic's fault. Just blame Mystic for that one. So let's get officially into the history of Nuka Cola. And again, we're going to start with the history before the bombs dropped.
Okay.
The formula for Nuka Cola was developed by an amateur chemist, John Caleb Bradburton, in the year 2042 and was perfected for sale by 2044. Within a year, the original formula was selling across the United States, and within a few years, it was a top-selling beverage across the globe.
Good marketing.
Yeah,
That's
not a lot of extrapolation as to why, but that's just how it was. Part of the reason for its success was that Nuka Cola was developed with 17 fruit essences.
Still not as many as Dr. Pepper, apparently.
23, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. In fact, when it launched in 2044, it already experienced a bit of a setback thanks to the Great Passion Fruit Famine.
Passion fruit?
Yes. When a recalibration of the flavoring had consumers already noticed a difference. Apparently, agricultural passion fruit issue, and it changed the way Nuka Cola tastes for a while.
So is this Nuka 2?
No, they were able to go back to the original formula after a point.
Or new Nuka? Nuco?
No, I will mention something like that soon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the fruit famine...
I don't know my Nuka Cola variety.
No, that's okay. Now I know many now. The fruit famine did not halt its inevitable success. Basically, passion fruit was able to get put back in, and so we now know one of the 17 fruit essences in the Nuka Cola flavoring. So, but it was still a big secret, the formula.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Fun fact, Mystic and I own the Fallout cookbook. They have a recipe for Nuka Cola in the book that we have actually made, and the recipe in there does require an orange, a lime, and a lemon in there, as well as, to my surprise, cardamom and coriander. It tastes all right, but for me it wasn't my favorite. I actually preferred the tart Nuka Cola Quantum recipe that was in the same book.
Yeah, I think most people prefer the Quantum.
Yeah, we made it for our housewarming. And we had both Nuka Cola and Nuka Cola Quantum. And people drink more of the Nuka Cola Quantum, but which in the recipe...
Neither is good for you.
No.
They are loaded with sugar.
Both have way too much sugar. The Nuka Cola Quantum, though, was more of a citrus sour flavor. Mm-hmm. And I think more people were into that than the kind of fruity, not really brown soda flavor.
Yeah, they had a little bit of a savoriness to it because of the browning sauce.
Yes. And that's why, also in that same cookbook, they have a Nuka Cola barbecue sauce.
That we should try.
Yeah, you have to make the Nuka Cola syrup itself, and then you use that to make a barbecue sauce. So, part of the success of Nuka Cola Corporation over the years was due to the division of beverageers in the company. Beverageers were a team of organic chemists that helped develop many of the flavors, with a core group of chemists supported by a very large junior-level team to help with the development tasks.
Beverage ears, like Disney Imagineers.
That's exactly the reference that they're making. The beverage ears are definitely calling out to the Imagineers. So, again, that's something that became more apparent in Nuka World. This team would then be involved later on with the development of Project Cobalt, which we will be talking about later.
Project Cobalt, huh?
Project Cobalt. We'll talk about that soon.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. The flavors of Nuka Cherry, Nuka Orange, and Nuka Grape are confirmed to be released at the same time a few short years after the smash debut of Nuka Cola. No confirmation in the games as to exactly what year. Nuka Cherry was developed after acquiring former competitor Merrill's Very Cherry Soda and tweaking the formula slightly. There is some conflicting history with this flavor due to the information provided in the Fallout Tactics game, where Nuka Cherry was so unpopular that Nuka Cola had to release Nuka Cola Classic, rebranding the soda in order to regain popularity. Obviously, a nod to New Coke.
Is Tactics canon?
So the way that I read this is that for me personally, I don't know if it's specifically canon, but I'm willing to say that there may be truth to both of these stories, since the sources that claim Nuka Cherry was very popular were all found in Nuka World. So it could
Okay.
be that Nuka World is covering up the craziness that was going on with their release. And you could say Fallout Tactics is doing what the nomenclature history is. So yeah, even though Fallout Tactics is probably just trying to do a nod to New Coke of 1985, which I missed that whole hubbubaloo by, virtue of not being born yet.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way for you to say that both of those could have happened at the same time.
Okay.
Nuka Orange was developed by the Nuka Cola Corporation under the code name Fur Seal. So it has a pear brandy baseline flavor, cutting the aftertaste with trace arsenic.
What?
Yeah, trace arsenic.
Like homeopathic, like arsenicum arsenic? Like, oh, there's 1 part per billion or whatever.
Probably something close to that. We have to remember that in the Fallout universe, a lot of references to previous corporations is that they want to muck the idea of the consumer having rights to their own safety when consuming something is definitely lower than it is in our timeline. So trace arsenic for flavoring. I mean, just think of it the same way as like why they have. I forget what it was. There's some dangerous chemical that they add in cigarettes for flavoring, and you're like, what? That makes no sense. Like ammonium or something like that. I forget. I learned that years ago when like it was very hip for you to be a kid against smoking, and I was being really annoying about that. Regardless, let's move on to Nuka Grape, which was originally Grape Pearl Soda, an overseas company started by Joni Chang. The formula was only tweaked to increase profit margins. So it almost was the same formula as Grape Pearl Soda, and they just did a little tweaking of it to make it cheaper to produce.
That sounds like we found a cheaper flavor.
Yeah, cheap. Well, if it was made overseas, maybe they found a good replacement that was easier to get in the United States, especially because
Okay.
this is happening in the 2040s. So you have to assume that like the beginnings of what would become the Sino-American War were happening. So
The
Sino-American War.
I vaguely like it rings a bell, but I don't know what.
So just so everybody knows, the bombs dropped because of what's called the Sino-American War. It's basically America and China fighting each other, and that's who dropped the bombs. And there's actually some controversy as did America drop their bombs first or did China drop their bombs first? And that's why in Fallout you're in a wasteland that's been nuked to
Right.
high heaven.
And who dropped it first could be a whole mini episode.
There's Oxthorn has another good video about, some of the facts about that. He kind of doesn't have a conclusion. So
I don't think anybody can draw a conclusion based on what I've seen, and what I've seen is spotty at best.
yeah,
So.
and it's one of the few conspiratorial things that I could possibly have a thesis on, but that'd be a mini episode. That's not going to be a whole episode. But all three of these flavors I mentioned, Nuka Cherry, Nuka Orange, and Nuka Grape, are said to be primarily distributed on the East Coast. There are flavors that are mentioned in the series that I haven't been able to find specific points in the timeline when they were released. So, I mean, if somebody out there more knowledgeable than I would like to tweet at Lore Together to let me know, feel free. But I figured I would mention those. The ones that have solid timeline dates, they'll be mentioned chronologically later on in the next two episodes, mostly in this episode. Here's a list of the ones whose release dates I'm not positive on. So you have Nuka Cola Dark, which was a rum blended Nuka Cola drink that was sold at 35% alcohol by volume.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty strong stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would put me on my butt.
Oh, definitely. I mean, it was a deep black color and found success in finer lounges around the United States. So it was the idea of that was like the adult Nuka Cola. You also have Nuka Cola Quartz, which is a white tinted drink with less additive coloring, but with insoluble sugar, which gave it this classic quartz look. Gave it a little bit of a shine.
So wait, insoluble sugar. So it's chewy? Like it has like crystals in it?
It has actual crystals in it. I wouldn't say it was chewy. It's more like it's got hard, insoluble sugar in it.
Do you remember a drink called Orbits?
Yes.
that
I
had
used
little
to
tiny,
love that stuff. It was
like,
so dumb.
here's your soda type drink with floating balls in
It
it.
wasn't even carbonated, which is
Yeah.
part of the reason why I liked it when I was a kid. It just had like these little chewy, and God knows what was in those things. I probably shouldn't have been eating them, but I did because they would flavor your water with these little soft, chewy balls. And I think I loved it because it was quirky. It wasn't pop. I don't like
Right.
brown soda.
I remember those. They were weird to drink.
Yeah. Oh, and I chewed on them, and they were like, they were tacky.
Yeah.
So it was weird.
It was like just here's a bunch of xanthan gumballs dipped in powdered flavoring or something.
But this is the sugar in Nuka Cola Quartz is more like actual crystals. So kind of like floating rock candy in your clear soda or white soda, excuse me. So this sugar that was in there also prevented the cavitation issues that a previous incarnations created. So cavitation is essentially this process that can take materials and literally give it a cavity, give it popped marked kind of a look. Not quite rust, but some kind of chemical reaction where a solid surface suddenly has pit marks in it.
So like the glass would have had pit marks in it.
Yes. There is some reference that there is a little bit of radioactive material in Nuka Cola Quartz to give it the glow, because a lot of times when you find it in the wasteland,
Has a slight glow.
there's a slight glow.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen that bottle. I remember that one.
So I wouldn't be surprised if the sugar then was added to help with this cavitation process that they were finding when they first were trying to develop the drink.
So here's the thing. I'm trying to go to my chemistry.
Yeah.
Like sugar by itself is soluble.
Yes.
How do you make it insoluble? Because my understanding is that sugar can be dissolved in water up to a point, and then
Yes.
it reaches a point where it can't be dissolved anymore. So is that what we're talking about? Like it's so sugary?
I at least it could be that. It really could be that.
Or it could be modified sugar in some way that doesn't dissolve.
It's
Okay.
I would think it's more likely it's a modified sugar because we're talking about organic chemists that are working for this company.
But it's also soda, so it being so sugary that it can't dissolve any more sugar also does make some sense.
I mean, the
This
Nuka
is-
Cola was infamously like 120% of your daily dose of sugar or something like that.
That's it.
One bottle, yeah.
I honestly expect a little bit more.
Yeah. I could be remembering that wrong. So,
It's just funny because you just mentioned that, and I had a Coke can next to me,
yeah.
and a can of Coke,
A can of regular Coca-Cola,
which is
yes.
12 ounces
Yeah.
or 355 milliliters,
Yeah.
is 78% of your daily sugar.
Okay.
So they're not so far to line with reality.
No. That part makes sense. Oh, and the code name of Nuka Cola Quartz was Angry Beaver. I don't know. I just been given this stuff to read out loud.
Angry Beaver.
I can't give you. I can give you a reason why.
Cobalt. What was the other one? Fur
Seal.
seal? Mm-hmm. Okay, Cobalt's the odd one out. The other ones are starting to sound like they could be not safe for work if you read them in the right way.
Project Cobalt is a different beast entirely than Angry Beaver and Fur Seal. I'll tell you that. So Nuka Cola Victory was then an orange drink that comes with a glow and was packaged with a red, white, and blue label. It was sold out in the American Southwest with a limited release, though you can also find that at Nuka World. So that was one you found more in Fallout New Vegas. It was supposed to have that patriotic feel to it, essentially, even though it's an orange drink.
I'm trying to remember where. I remember finding Nuka Cola in New Vegas.
Oh,
Was it rare?
The Nuka Cola Victory, yeah, it was rare, but I've found it in that
You have?
game.
Okay, I remember the sarsaparilla more than anything.
Yeah, well, Sunset Sarsaparilla was all over the place there because the factory's in the game. So.
Right.
In addition, we find out about unreleased flavors of Nuka Cola throughout the years, in various games here and there. There was Nuka Cola Black, which is a failed coffee-flavored variant that was developed under the codename Walrus.
There was a Coca-Cola Black too. That was a coffee-flavored Coke. So.
Yeah, and it just didn't work out. You also have Nuka Cola Boost, which is an attempt to improve on Nuka Cola Black, but instead of using coffee, they use dextromethamphetamine. They literally used meth in Nuka Cola. So Nuka Cola Boost would have been Nuka Cola, now with meth. So
Power Thirst is crystal meth.
it's crystal meth in a can. Power Thirst crystal meth in a can. Power Thirst crystal meth.
That's old internet.
Oh my gosh. Okay, for anybody who's too young to remember Power Thirst, just Google the YouTube video Power Thirst, and it's just
We'll put a link in the description.
it's one of the dumbest internet memes. It was just somebody who just wanted to make fun of
energy drinks.
Yeah. And it's basic, and that was like early aughts
Yeah.
energy drink commercials, which the only other thing I could think of that parodies it well enough is some of the Old Spice commercials, especially the ones with Terry Crews in them, that it's the same kind of energy.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so they had Nuka Cola with meth.
Yeah, they never ended up releasing it, but that's what they had. They also had Nuka Cola Clear, which was a lemon lime soda developed after acquiring a competitor. Brad Burton realized releasing it would interfere with the release of Nuka Cola Quantum and postponed the release of this flavor until 2079.
So that never came out.
It never came out in the universe.
Because I know that 2077 is when the bombs fall.
Yes.
Okay.
In 2049, Brad Burton was inspired by the joy of people drinking Nuka Cola on fairgrounds during Memorial Day and decided that such joy should happen all year round. With the runaway hit funds from Nuka Cola, he opened Nuka World May 1st, 2050, with over 40,000 visitors during its grand opening. The amusement park would only open with Nuka Town, USA, and Kitty Kingdom sections. So it only had 2 parts of the amusement park open at that time.
Okay.
Yeah, Nuka Town, USA featured an amphitheater, a couple restaurants, the 100-meter tall Fizz Top Mountain featured that held a lot of staff supply rooms and everything. And it also had an arcade. It also held Brad Burton's office on site there.
Oh, okay.
Kitty Kingdom featured a Ferris wheel and a performance by the magician Oswald Oppenheimer, also known as Oswald the Outrageous, whose shows would sell out like every day. There were also other random performances and I think little rides here and there.
Mm-hmm.
One of the fun traditions developed at Nuka World was the ability to have visitors mix and match Nuka Cola flavors to make new drinks. The popular mixes would get names. For example, mixing a Nuka Cherry with a Nuka Cola Orange was called a Nuka Sunrise. There were about 15 possible mixes suggested at the Nuka Mixer Station by the time the bombs were dropped on the Old World, including flavors that were just released that day.
That reminds me of I don't know if they still do this, but if you go into certain fast food places
Yeah.
and you go to their fountain, they would have the normal fountain stuff, but they'd have pre-done mixes too.
It used to be a thing, I think, in the 90s in particular. Now that they have those machines where you could kind of do it already on your own, where you can put a flavor with almost any...
Well, no, you would go, I know what you're talking about, but you would go up and it would have, Coke and Sprite, and there'd be another button in that grouping that would say black and tan, which was Coke and Sprite mixed.
Which I can't imagine that tasting good.
But there'd be numerous buttons like that where there'd be pre-mixed, you can get these mixed.
Yeah. No. Well, now I'm thinking about now both Pepsi and Coca-Cola have those machines where you can customize your drinks in crazy ways. So in 2058, Brad Burton attempted to buy out the competitor Sunset Sarsaparilla, a soda company based in the Southwest, which we were just talking about.
Right.
That's in New Vegas. However, the CEO of that company declined the offer. In order to capture part of the root beer market, Brad Burton had his beverageers develop the drink Nuka Cola Wild. This cola was actually one distributed in areas where Sunset Sarsaparilla was not as popular, including in Nuka World in the newly opened Dry Rock Gulch section of the Nuka World amusement park.
Is that there actually?
Yes. Yeah, Dry
I don't know
Rock
if I've ever
Gulch
been through
is
that
there.
one.
Yeah. This part of the park was fashioned to look like the American frontier with features like Mad Mulligan's Minecraft coaster and the big drop ride Old Sugar Top.
Did you say Minecraft coaster?
Minecart coaster. Yeah.
We're keeping that in.
My 2020 mind. Literally, it's actually written in my script, Minecraft coaster. And literally, it's a minecart coaster.
You didn't even play Minecraft.
No, I don't. I watch people play Minecraft. I don't play it.
Speaking, I'm going to do a diversion here because you remind me. The next update for Minecraft is putting in archaeology and history. So we'll eventually be doing Minecraft lore.
Oh my gosh. There is already some lore in there, but now they're just making it deeper.
But it's implied. Now they're actually going to start making some concrete stuff, apparently.
Interesting.
So I'm excited for that. Anyway.
Okay. Sorry. So correcting myself from earlier, even though you're going to hear my flub, it's Mad Milligan's Minecart coaster, which don't think of Minecraft. Think of like the Donkey Kong levels where you had to jump from track to track. And then the big drop ride at Old Sugar Top. As well, of course, some performances and other things like that.
Right. I'm sure they had a Wild West show.
Yes, absolutely.
Those were always fun.
Yeah. And then, of course, an excuse to sell Nuka Cola Wild, that root beer flavor. But it still never really hit off in places where Sunset Sarsaparilla had a hold.
So it kind of was at Nuka World, and that's about it.
Yeah. So that's kind of the excuse why, you don't see Nuka Cola Wild in New Vegas. It's because Sunset Sarsaparilla took over beforehand.
Right.
So Nuka Cola had to settle a lawsuit in 2062 regarding the use of their bottle design. So apparently somebody had already trademarked their bottle design. Having to rebrand, this is when it's believed the introduction of the famous Nuka Girl was introduced.
The Nuka Girl? Oh.
Yes, the
okay.
Nuka Girl. The spaceship-shaped bottle helped tweak the design enough, and it became the inspiration for the skimpy spacesuit that the Nuka Girl is known for wearing. The Nuka Girl costume sold out in stores immediately, and suppliers could not keep up with demand. So essentially, the only reason she exists as a mascot is because they had to redesign their bottles.
All right.
Also, practically, this explains why in earlier games, Nuka Cola's bottles look like Coca-Cola bottles, but then once you get in later games, they're shaped like a spaceship.
Well, it doesn't explain it in terms of
Why you can find both kinds?
Right.
Agreed. No,
They're
it doesn't.
both post
It's
war.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but yeah, it's a retcon, which is fine.
Exactly. In 2067, Nuka World opened the Safari Adventure section. Although the public knew Safari World to be home to several hundred animal species, the underground facilities secretly housed a Nuka Gen genetic replicator that was able to clone animals.
Wait. Why?
If they needed a new version of an animal, they could just clone it again. Like, oh no, our leopard died. Let's just make a new one.
It's just weird that it's Nuka branded. Like, okay.
Brad Burton was apparently got really connected in the scientific community, and he was able to get things like this.
Oh, okay.
So, different animal genes could also be spliced and combined if you wanted to do that. However, if incomplete gene sequences were entered, or, there's something off with your DNA sample, the resulting animal would be created inside out, only to then explode.
That's a reference to Galaxy Quest.
Right, exactly. Digitize it. Heck, will it work? Oh, no, you don't want to see what happened over here. I forget the exact lines, but I think
it was inside out. Then it exploded. Exploded!
In the notes in the game, it actually referenced this happening to them trying to do this to a polar bear.
Oh.
So the poor polar bear would only live for a few seconds before it exploded in agonizing pain.
What we got back didn't live long, fortunately.
Oh, gosh.
That's a horrifying scene. I shouldn't be laughing.
Yeah. This caught the attention of the group Animal Friends and Defenders for the cruelty of cloning the animals. Through the years and ramping up to the 2070s, the group would disturb the safari adventure attractions with vandalism as well as disrupting operations in full animal suits or in animal tattoos. There were also instances where they were known to steal animals from the exhibits. Mm-hmm. However, it makes sense because Safari World was also known to have poisonous snakes in its petting zoo, like death adders.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That's a terrible idea.
Well, it's not a terrible idea if you make people then have to have show their ticket, and before they can get treatment, they have to go all the way back from Safari Adventureland to Nukatown, USA, to the main office to then sign their waiver before they could get help. Meanwhile, they're poisoned.
That seems like that would cause more problems.
So it's so funny because if you're playing in that part of Nuka World, you find so many different liability issues that it seems like they try to write off with, well, you have a ticket that shows that we're not liable. Well, you signed this waiver. Literally, kids would go there for field trips, and there was a death and dismemberment form that their parents had to sign before they would get to Safari Adventureland. And
I'm just shaking my head.
And
like, this is
it
ridiculous.
became relevant, apparently. Like this, it's just such an absurd situation. So, I mean, if you want to talk about, capitalism gone amok, it's kind of a commentary on that idea of like, well, what happens if we let libertarian ideals to their final conclusions?
Reduce regulations and all that
Yeah,
stuff.
and this is what happens. You have children actually becoming dismembered and their parents being liable for the cleanup. Stuff like that.
And of course, there's only one Nuka World. There's no competitor amusement park.
Exactly.
So,
but animal friends and defenders, they weren't worried about the kids getting dismembered. They were more worried about the fact that these animals were suffering. So they would come in and, do their thing.
People putting animals above other people sounds pretty accurate.
At least that's the evidence that's shown after that we have available to us. We don't know.
I'm sorry if we're getting political, but we're also dealing with a franchise that is inherently political.
The franchise is inherently... I mean, it's about nuclear war. You can't make that not political.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a commentary on the craziness of our world extrapolated out.
Exactly, like any good parody does. So Nuka World would open their last section, Galactic Zone, in 2072. With its space future theme, Brad Burton was able to use his military contacts to equip the whole section with military-grade robots, all connected to this STAR mainframe, STAR mainframe, at the amusement park.
That's the one thing I do know about that area. There's two things I know about Galactic Zone is the star cores, because I collected all those and turned off the robots.
Right.
And also that Vault-Tec has a, quote, ride or exhibit there. Or
it is an exhibit, actually. So the reason all the robots are there was to ensure that Brad Burton would have an available army to protect the park in case of invasion during the Sino-American War. Because by this point, the Americans and the Chinese have been fighting for at least a couple of years, if I remember correctly. So there's all this worry about when the Chinese will come over here and try to take us over and invade, because they already had invaded Alaska. In this world. Right.
And there was apparently a war on the moon. The only reason I bring that up is you find stuff in the Museum of Independence or whatever in Fallout 4 that hints that there was a war or battle on the Sea of Tranquility.
Yeah, I can't speak for that for sure.
I'm just saying that's something that just popped into my head when you mentioned the war.
Yeah, that might actually be there might be a plaque that mentions that in Nuka World as well, but I do not remember it specifically.
There is. In Galactic Zone, there is a suit of armor you can get that is in like a moon diorama type thing.
Right. So Robco helped with providing some of the defense robots, essentially. So a lot of the classic robots that we're used to seeing and fighting in. Okay. And Vault-Tec also helped with the attraction, showing how the vaults could help colonize space in the future. So they were going to use Vault-Tec to go to space. It was like Amongst the Stars, I think is what that exhibit was called.
Vault-Tec Amongst the Stars. I just did this the other day. That's why it's fresh in my mind.
Oh, okay.
The thing that irked me in it is even in the exhibit, they're running experiments on people.
Right? Yeah, I forgot about that part.
Even in the exhibit, they're testing like different frequencies for like mind control and stuff.
Yeah, Vault-Tec's gonna Vault-Tec. I forgot that was definitely part of that attraction. It's like, yeah, look at how great this is. P.S. We're actually using you as part of our research. Oh my gosh.
Just walking through there and I was like, oh, there's an employee section. Oh, they're doing experiments on everybody.
Exactly. In March of 2076, General C. Braxton approached Brad Burton about recruiting his beverage ears to help develop chemical weapons for the Sino-American War. Both the U.S. and China were in the midst of a biological and chemical weapons race, and Brad Burton had for his company the top organic chemists in the country. Brad Burton was only willing to offer them over for a trade to become part of Project LEAP X. LEAP stands for Life Extension and Prolongation. This program was a biochemical engineering endeavor with the hope to preserve a whole human body in a calibrated biosuit.
Okay, I do know. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
This is the one thing I do know about this guy's life.
Yeah. So. Brad Burton was in pursuit of immortality and wanted in on the research as a participant. Braxton agreed, and with that, the top-level beverageers were then lent to the U.S. military and started on Project Cobalt.
Okay.
Yeah. Lead beverageer Rex Meacham was then the head of the project and put his whole team on the project regardless of their wishes. The researchers, which included Ruth Leavitt, which she goes by Kate in the game actually. So there's documents that say Ruth Leavitt. There's dialogue and notes that say Kate Leavitt, so they think that there might have been a mix-up in the writing. The way that the wiki says this is that her nickname is Kate. Like, her middle name says that her nickname is Kate, but her real first name is Ruth.
Which is a fair...
I personally don't mind
that.
That's
That's a fair fan explanation.
Like this, along with like the Nuka Cherry, like weirdness, those are little inconsistencies that don't bother me as much because Fallout is so big.
Inconsistencies like that happen in every single story.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and you can't, the level of editing you need for a video game with this much detail in the world. Yeah. Ruth Kate Leavitt was one of the researchers, as was Edmund Medford and Kevin Bennell. And they all ended up locked in a bunker in a bottling plant that was actually on Nuka World to focus on their secret research. They worked on radioactive isotopes. The work on radioactive isotopes that they were doing proved to be elusive despite the opportunity to entirely focus on the project. They were basically locked in this bunker for weeks. The main issue was trying to keep the isotopes stable while figuring out how to weaponize their energy. There was finally success with the radioactive properties of strontium-90.
Oh, fun. Okay.
Sample Q4N7-UM. In the real world, strontium-90 is sometimes the product of radioactive waste and is used for bone cancer treatments, thermoelectric generators, and inspecting helicopter blades for cracks. Because they're hollow, so it's really important for you to figure out
it makes sense that helicopter blades would be hollow, but it never occurred to me that they were.
Yeah, I don't think all of them are, but I think some of them are.
Also, I'm going to guess that this being Nuka Cola, they're like, this is potentially deadly. Let's put it in the drink.
This sample of strontium was able to absorb incoming energy, which made it a versatile addition to some military tech. Meacham named the substance Quantum based on the sample name.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. Like, I'm like, oh, they're doing radioactive stuff. Maybe this is where Quantum comes from, but I didn't know.
Right. There you go. The findings were given to General Braxton, who then used the information to start his work on the Nuka Nuke prototype in 2077, which also Meacham and the rest of the team worked on as well. But they gave some of their information to Braxton preemptively. That same year, Nuka Cola Corporation had won a legal battle against Vim Pop. I say it like that because VIM exclamation point is the name. So right. Vim.
That's the one from Far Harbor, I think, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And they won their legal battle over a trademark dispute. Vim had developed their own Vim Quartz, a bubblegum flavored soda drink that was sold primarily in Maine, where Vim Pop was more popular than Nuka Cola. Like, seriously, like a pride issue. That, you know, they're like, why would you drink that bad Nuka Cola? We've got Vim. So there was a sense of regional pride to drinking Vim Pop, and Brad Burton was determined to break into that market. Who knows why? That's just what he was feeling. Nuka Cola ended up hiring saboteurs to work against Vim's efforts to expand, including corporate espionage to discover newly developed flavors, and where valuable power suits were used for advertising campaigns were being sent, so someone could steal them before a marketing event. This was happening around the same time Nuka Cola was settling their lawsuit against Vim Pop. Since the CEO of Vim, Doyle Reed, was not willing to be bought out, Brad Burton was hoping to use this information to manipulate the value of the company and then change Reed's mind. So actually in Far Harbor, when you go to Vim, you'll see that there's literally are a couple of undercover agents, including somebody working for Vim, who's trying to figure out what their Captain's Blend soda recipe is going to be. And Mystic, do you know what was the secret to Captain's Blend Vim soda?
I believe you spoiled this one when I told you I was playing Far Harbor, because I think you said fish oil was included.
It was basically like a mix of like fiddleheads and fish oil and something else like that. And people actually liked it. It made them smell like fish after they drank it. Like they'd sweat and they'd smell fishy. The Vim litigation was not the most important thing on Brad Burton's mind. Leap X had made the progress they needed to guarantee immortality. However, there was a catch. They could only sustain up to 15 pounds of organic material at a time. Brad Burton was disappointed that he didn't receive the full bodysuit as intended, but on April 2nd of 2077, he underwent the procedure to behead himself and live the rest of his unending days attached to the Leap X tech in his personal Vault-Tec vault underneath his office in Nuka World. Each day, his assistant Peyton Huxley would update him on the status of the company and would perform tasks delegated by Brad Burton. It seems right before the bombs dropped, there was a limited public release of an experimental flavor called Nuka Cola Cranberry in Appalachia. The development of the drink was to mostly manipulate the ingredients, flavors, and marketing and have perception of being more of like a health tonic or a health drink.
Is that from Fallout 76?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah. And in fact, that's one of the places where they also did an experimental release of the next drink we're going to talk about. At the same time, consumers in that market tested the new flavor of Nuka Cola Quantum. Beveragier Leavitt had voiced her moral concerns with the production of military-grade weapons becoming part of the work to Meacham, who was the head beveragier. And she looked up to and respected. In fact, some of the notes suggest that like Meacham actually had like a love for Kate Leavitt in a weird way. And in Fallout 76, there's a suggestion that the two of them went to a bed and breakfast or some sort of hotel together. So there's an insinuation of some sort of personal relationship.
Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever.
But it's not confirmed. So after a time, his solution was to have her work on a consumption-safe version of the quantum substance. Leavitt, I might be saying Leavitt or Leavitt. I think it's Leavitt. Leavitt. So excuse me if I keep switching the name back and forth. My apologies.
I switched Medici.
Yeah.
I did it.
I just want to acknowledge that I'm doing that. So Leavitt, being second to none in her field, was able to develop such a substance. Brad Burton quickly worked on the necessary steps to market and sell the product, lying to investors that the flavor had been developed over a 3-year period. The Nuka Cola Quantum recipe not only had the addition of the new quantum substance, but also an 18th flavor to the fruit blend, pomegranate, which is actually also pomegranate juice is in the recipe for Nuka Cola Quantum in the Fallout cookbook.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Preliminary batches of the drink did result in the test subjects dying due to complications like organ failure. But later on, test subjects only suffered from dizziness and other quote-unquote mild side effects before its East Coast release, which one mild side effect was that their pee would glow in the dark.
Well, that would be quite alarming, actually.
Yeah. It flourished in the test markets, including in Washington, D.C. The FDA approved the drink despite it making consumers pee glow-in-the-dark pee.
Like yellow or blue?
I think it just was glowing. I don't think it was the same color as Quantum. It just made the pee glow. The FDA approved it. Brad Burton hurried the incorporation of the drink in Nuka World, having a river of it made for the World of Refreshment boat ride. As actors trained for the grand opening, they were encouraged to drink straight from the river to confirm how safe the drink was to enjoy. The drink was officially released to the public, so everywhere, on October 23rd, 2077. Unfortunately, October 23rd, 2077 is also when the old world ended in the Fallout universe, as nuclear war created the vast wastelands of the United States, and presumably their rival China as well. However, this would not end the story of Nuka Cola Corporation, as vestiges of it survived the bombs in strange and incredible ways. And with that, we are done with episode 1 of Nuka Cola's history.
All right.
Yeah. So, next 2 weeks from now, we're going to find out about what happened with a lot of the stuff that's associated with Nuka World. Very interesting stories about what happened after the bombs dropped.
I know a little bit of Kitty Kingdom and Galactic Zone, but that's about it. Like I didn't even know.
Yeah.
I honestly had no idea that there was a Safari Zone.
Yes, there is a Safari Zone. And just to let people know, we're not going to go through we're not going to go into like, and then the Raiders took over, because that's not part of Nuka Cola Corporation.
Right.
They're in the vestiges of Nuka Cola Corporation. So we're going to talk about what remains, basically, after the bombs drop and the dust settles, what is still happening. So, well, that's it for this week. Please tune in to the next episode. I'm so excited to tell you what happens next.
So, yeah, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you then.
Catch you then. Bye-bye.
Bye.